Welcome to Live Into Your Best Life, a show where people learn how to go from where they are to where they'd like to be in any area of life. If you're looking for a new job, wanting to improve your relationships, or even reclaim your health, Paulie Skaja will share with you a simple formula that can take you on a journey to begin to live into your best life in all areas of life. Now sit back and begin your journey.
Hello, and welcome to Live Into Your Best Life. I'm Paulie Skaja, your show's host, and I'm here today with Angie Kyllo. So Angie is someone that I worked with, a really long time ago. And I'm not going to say how long because, it doesn't matter. But we worked on one of the world's largest data migration efforts in the medical industry, which was really cool, really complex, lots of moving parts, lots of people. And I loved your collaboration style. I love how you helped chunk things down and brought people along on the journey. So we were talking before the show about that's something we have in common. But then I also really appreciate how you've pivoted your life due to various circumstances we'll get into. And you reached out about a year ago regarding a life change or a career change that you were making. And while you still do project management, you're moving down a path and you've become a certified end-of-life doula. And I'm like, ooh, what's that? Just so happened my mom was starting to go through those phases. Now, since then, we've lost mom, and it was a relatively quick process. But I remember talking to you, or we just chatted. I don't remember if we talked on the phone or not, and thinking to myself, oh, what a valuable resource for families. And most people don't even know what they have available. And then I invited you to an event and you came, and I got to actually give you a hug last week. And I thought, it would be really awesome to share your story because you are someone who continues to live into your best life and you continue to look at the journey, and you're such an inspiration. So thank you, Angie, for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so happy to be here, Polly.
I would like you to start wherever you want and tell folks about your journey and how you got where you are now.
Well, thanks, Polly. And as I said, I'm really grateful to be here and journey it has been. I will tell you that much. So yeah, it was literally about a year ago. I was driving into my then corporate IT project management job and listening as I do all in my during my commutes to a podcast, and there was a woman who was talking about being an end of life doula, and everything that she was saying was really speaking to kind of things that I had been thinking about. I wanted to do something more with my life and being of service, which is what doula stands for, is of service. So everybody kind of knows the doula process of child doula or childbirth doula, right?
Mhm.
But there is this notion of end of life doula as well, and it's just really being of service to someone as they get towards the end of their life. And as I was listening, I was recalling the time, during my journey as my husband, who was dying of terminal cancer back in 2005. And thankfully, we had that opportunity to see him through that end stage of life where he was diagnosed terminal. And we had about 18 days where he went through hospice care. We were at home with him, and we did get to see him go through that end of life process. And I say thankfully because that's really a journey that is something that is amazing. And it's a part of the process that I was very grateful to have. And hospice is amazing.
Mhm.
Um, and I recommend, that process. But hearing this woman talk about being an end of life doula and the additional things that she was able to bring to families and the services that are available through something like a doula was just amazing. So, having a doula, you really can personalize end of life. So you, as someone who is dying, can have a doula be there for you, and you can really personalize your end of life. You can talk about, this is what I want to see during that process. This is what who I want to have around me. This is how I want my services to be performed. If you're fortunate enough to have, the wherewithal to be able to do that, but also your family can do this. Your doula can be there for your family members to also be able to have that time with a doula to be able to kind of set, this is what we want to see and those sort of things. So it's taking that extra step to really ensure that that journey is more personalized, if you will. But for me as a doula, one of the things that I really focus in on is after the fact, right? After the person has died, there's things that happen that a doula continue, or at least myself, continue to take that journey with the family.
Mm.
When my husband died, cleaning out his clothes afterwards was a really big journey as well. Um, just taking the moments, to go through his things, knowing who give what to who, and things like that. Um, if you don't have a support system, a doula can be there for you to be that support system to help with that sort of things. But being of service, for me personally, is I'm kind of wired towards that, to carry on that, have that part of me be part of somebody else and be able to do that. That's just some intrinsically part of who I am.
Hmm.
So that doula aspect just like really resonates with me as wanting, to take my life experience and learning and carry it on to others.
Very nice. Very nice. So as you were sharing, I was thinking, um, when my mom went through this process at this beginning of the year, um, I was thinking to myself, well, we have a priest in the family, and he just kind of, when we needed to help mom get back to ground zero, and like there was a period of time where there was the denial, right, and the different phases people go through, and she got really mean. And
Oh,
I just reached out to my cousin and said, "So I need a little help here." And he and my mom have such a great relationship that, she listens to him. She's not going to listen to her daughter, but having that third party that, and he had wanted, and her and him had made an agreement to that he would just be there for her, which was really kind of
hmm
cool.
hmm
Not every family has a priest, right? And so,
Yep.
but I
Yep.
was just thinking some of the things that the services that you offer are, that comfort and that third party. So because sometimes it can get difficult,
Yep.
and it's nice to have someone there to help the family stay grounded, get regrounded, help the family know how to navigate, help the person know how to navigate what they're going through. Um,
Right.
and we had downsized mom multiple times until she had just one room, and we kept purging her stuff and donating it
Yeah.
because we don't know how she acquired so many things. But then ultimately when we had to clean her room, it was down to a bunch of garbage bags. We put everything in garbage bags and just said, anyone who wants anything, they can take it and then donate it to your garage sale. And we knew it was good, and there was a lot of stuff still had price tags. so
Goodness. Yes.
so that was, but on the flip side, what you shared about going through the loss of your husband, which I'm sorry, I had no idea how fast it happened. And it took me back to in 97 when my dad had an accident. And the accident happened on Saturday, and he passed on Tuesday.
Mhm.
And that fast pace. You're literally moving in fight or flight, and I have blanks in time because
Yeah.
I was in shock and all the things, right? And I was just thinking how this is going to sound weird to some people, but how cool it would be to have an end of life doula on speed dial, right? Because
Yeah. Well,
we didn't know what we didn't know.
yeah. And it's really, for me, 6 months after the fact is when I started realizing, oh, wait a minute, I don't remember that, but so for me personally, as a doula, I'm checking back in. I'm checking back in a year later.
Nice.
I want to, I'm the type of person that remembers and wants to check back in and say, how are things going? In the United States, we want a funeral to happen and we want it to be over. We want it to be done, doop, 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 done, right? But my daughter's breakdown happened a year after her dad died, and in the middle of the lunchroom at her school. And all of her friends were like, "What is wrong with you? Your dad died a year ago." And so grief and death, it doesn't just come and go. It's there for a long haul. And as someone who's gone through it, I recognize, it happens. And it's even the language that we use. We soften the words. We soften the words. People, talk about passing away. It's an easier phrase than saying my husband died. It's we soften things, and that's fine. You use the language that you want to use, but everybody wants to move on. And I, on my 20th wedding anniversary, I was sitting in my cube at my office, and I was sobbing, and it was 20 years. So
Yeah.
grief comes in waves, and it doesn't necessarily come on your timetable. So as a doula, I keep what am I looking for? Database of dates and memorances and birthdays that isn't just the living, right?
Right.
So I want to be the one that kind of sends the notes and the remembrances of, hey, this might be a day that you might be thinking of your loved one, and so am
Mhm.
I. So it's just one of those things that I think we can do better in society of remembering death, and that it's the life that it's all a matter of what we do. Right?
That's
it's
right.
it's happening all around us. So
Right.
it's a big deal. So
Well, and to that point, so mom was in an assisted living, and while she had Alzheimer's and dementia, she wasn't needing memory care. So she was able to stay where she was, which was really good. Um, I didn't realize until about a month later, my sister and I, so mom passed in April, but we had her service, her burial service, Mother's Day. And then
mm,
it was a week later that we had set money aside so that we could have an after party. And so my sister and I took the whole family, and there was only 20 some of us, but we all went out to a local restaurant and just celebrated mom's life. And we had set aside enough money so that we were then able to cater in burgers and fries from her favorite restaurant. And so it was that day that it hit me how the impact her life made on those people at that facility and how many people cared about her. And so since then, so that would have been in May. And the day of her funeral, I actually took cupcakes in honor of Mother's Day to everybody at the assisted living. So then in June, I took cupcakes for Father's Day. And then just last Wednesday, because it was the day after National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day, of
oh,
course, I took 4 dozen chocolate chip cookies, and I delivered them on my way to dinner to meet with some people. I stopped by just before they were gonna be serving dinner, and it turned out they were gonna be having oranges for dinner for their dessert. And I'm like, and they were so excited to see cookies because cookies
yay,
are more fun than oranges.
yay.
And the people that they were so excited to see me, And they started telling more stories, many of the stories I'd already heard about mom, right? Because they're all in this place. But it was just really cool to know the impact she made and just to keep that moving forward, like you're talking about, because it doesn't just end. And it doesn't
Mhm.
just impact those people. It's like it impacted my sister and I. It also impacted my husband, her husband, our kids, our grandkids, the people she lived, all the ripple effect. People seem to forget that. And then I think the other piece that you touched on is how important that, okay, the funeral's done, you should be okay. And yet we still have to go through life. So everybody around us who cares, who checked in on us while mom was going through the process, made sure we were okay, taking care of ourselves. She passed. They were checking in on us. The funeral happened, and crickets, right?
Crickets. Exactly.
And
Yep.
then all of a sudden it's like, and so the first time I've shopped at J.C. Penney's after all of this, and I go up the I'm going to cry. I go up the escalator, and there's the clothes mom would have been shopping for.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
it's like
Yep.
I'm standing in the middle of the store sobbing because I
Yep.
can't buy my mom that new thing.
Right.
Silly, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it does. There's no rhyme or reason to when it's going to happen, and it's that, and it's all the firsts
Yeah,
too. I mean, you're going to have
exactly.
your first Thanksgiving coming up.
Oh, her birthday is next month.
Okay. So you've got that coming up. You've had your mom's day, and you've
Yep.
got your Thanksgiving coming up and birthday, and it's all that. But it's going to be the fourth one, and
Yeah,
it's going to hit you, or it's
that's
going to
right.
be, it just it, like I said, it just doesn't end when the funeral is over. And if we could be more gracious and aware of that, and understanding of it, it just it makes life um a lot easier, I think, when we can do that.
Yeah. All right. So project management to end of life doula. Now, I think it's really cool that a podcast was kind of a catalyst for that, but help the listeners understand, because it seems like in my mind, and I can connect the dots because I have a similar background to you from that corporate world, right? I can connect the
Mhm.
dots. But someone who's just listening in and thinking to themselves, a project manager of multi-million dollar projects to an end of life doula who has to be compassionate and working with people, real living people who are going through a lot of different things. Connect the dots for us. How did that?
Sure. Well, so I mean, one of the things that I find myself being pretty good at is listening, first of all, and then understanding what people's needs are.
Mm.
So, in the world of project management, one of the key things that you have to be able to do is listen and understand what the needs are, and then bringing in all the resources that you need to meet those needs and managing them to get something done. And so, in my project management world, that's what I do on a daily basis. I just do it very formally, understanding what the needs are, getting all the right people together, building a plan, and then, creating that plan and holding everybody accountable for what that plan is and seeing it through,
Yeah.
managing issues, risks, schedules, budgets. That's project management 101.
Mhm.
When it comes to being a doula, tons and tons of listening, bringing all the people together to find out what the needs are, bringing all the people together to meet those needs, and then managing that.
Mm.
So the other thing about being a doula really is scheduling people to be around for the person that is dying as well. So, if there's a lot of people that want to come and visit that dying person. The doula can make sure and manage everybody's schedules to say, okay, Mary's going to be here at such and such a time, or someone's going to bring the dinners at such and such a time, or, you know, whatnot, right? So they have this need, so and so is going to provide that. Myself as the doula can manage that. So there's the marrying up of the project management and the skills and whatnot. So
Nice.
um, it's kind of second nature for me at this point, as far as understanding a need, getting the people involved that can help meet that need, and getting everybody scheduled to get it all done.
Nice. So as you look forward, where do you want to take this next?
I would love to see, you know, my next chapter in life being more and more and more of service, of service, and putting my corporate skills on the back burner, as far as, being in the 9 to 5 day-to-day corporate world, and doing more and more of service type things with my um, doula business kind of taking off. I know I've mentioned that I'm also a certified life coach
Mhm.
as well. So bringing that into the fold, teaching others to also become doulas, really expanding that
Nice.
um, to become more and more. See having more doulas out there in the world to I'd love to have people as a part of my work or my effort, or whatever you want to call it. I'd love to see us becoming more and more comfortable with death
Mhm.
in every part of the corner that I touch.
Mhm.
Um, I talk about it as if it's just everyday life. Like if I have a memory of if we're talking and it sparks a memory of my husband Steve, I bring it up. I talk about it.
Mhm.
I know that I've made people uncomfortable
Mhm.
by doing that, because not everybody is as comfortable speaking about the dead as I am. But it's part of my life. It's part of
Mhm.
my everyday life. So I do it, and I do it somewhat on purpose at times, because I do wish that other people were more comfortable with it.
Mhm.
But that's part of who I am too. It's my story, and I also feel like I shouldn't have to squash any part of my story either. So, if we're talking about something and it reminds me of, oh, this trip that we took to DC back when my daughter was in 8th grade, I bring it up. Oh yeah, my late husband and I, we went to DC and we had a really great time, yada yada. So
Mhm.
ultimately, I wish for my activities to make death more of a commonplace discussion is
Mhm.
ultimately what I'd love to see happen.
Well, death is part of life,
Yeah,
right? I mean, everything, there's the
right.
seasons, right? And so death is kind of like winter.
Right. It is
And
indeed.
yeah, um, I love that. I never actually thought about how other people might feel. Because usually that's one of the things that I tend to think like, okay, if I say this, how is it going to make that person feel, type of thing. When my dad's accident happened, and ultimately we realized this is it, he's going to pass, and whatever. Um, I decided I wanted to keep the memory of dad alive. And I wanted to keep the spirit of dad alive, in regards to he was such an amazing person and touched so many lives, and he was my very first mentor. And I wanted to make sure my kids got to experience what Papa would be like, right? And now we're doing that with my grandkids, because
Yeah.
they got to know great Grammy, but they didn't get to know great Papa. And so um, just that, we've got some pictures, and it's so cute because, like, we've got a picture of my dad, and my son was only not even 2 years old when my dad's accident happened. And my grandson saw the picture and wanted to know who's the little boy. He knew that was grandpa or great grandpa,
Oh,
but who's the little boy? Well, that's Uncle T. And and then he's like, really? He was little once? Because my son's like 6 feet tall. And so, anyways, it was just, but it, then we talk about what they were fishing, and we talk about the stories, or my daughter will share stories, and how they rode it was his tractor lawnmower that was the first machine she ever drove, and different things like that. And so just a lot of fun stories, even though my kids were only not quite 2 and 7 when he passed. We've been able to share our memories as well to keep that. And I think that that has really helped our family. And I know it helped our mom, because daddy was the love of her life. And so continuing to share those stories. And then as she was preparing the end of her life, we have that "Tell Me About Your Life, Grandma" books, right? And so it has the different questions. Daddy had filled in parts of his grandpa book, and we had 2 books for grandma, and they were only had certain pages filled in. So I sat down one day and I started asking her questions, and she started telling me stories. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
while we didn't get many of the questions answered, we got lots of really cool stories to share. And a lot of the stories she told went back to the days with dad, which was
Yeah.
that was really kind of therapeutic for me as well, I think, because it was neat to the stories she would remember, the most important stories, and those were some of the last stories that I got to hear. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. That's so important to tell, keep stories alive and to keep talking. My son was 3 when his dad died. And because we talked so much about Steve, and we told Rocco, my son,
Yeah.
all about him, that he has a pretty vivid, quote unquote, vivid memory of his dad. And Rocco's 22 now, almost 22, will be in October. And his partner, they've been together now for over 20 or over 2 years. And I've noticed that Rocco is able to tell Liam about his dad
Mhm.
in ways that he would not have been able to had we not told him these stories.
Yeah.
And he can tell Liam about the things that the way Steve was, like
Mhm.
his personality, his sense of humor, things that he would not have been able to had we not continued to tell the stories.
Yep.
And that just is so heartwarming. And so keeping them alive and talking about him, and like again, we talk about Steve all the time. And just, oh, and I tell Rocco, you get that from your dad. Rocco loves to get the mail. He loves mail. That is something that his dad loved to do. He loved the mail. You don't touch the mail, Steve gets the mail, dad gets the mail. And Rocco does. I mean, that's his thing. So to say, Rocco, you get that from your dad, or some quirk in his personality or something, you get that from your dad. It's amazing how many things that he can say to Liam, this is like my dad, or that's like my dad. And he was 3. So
That's
keeping that
cool.
alive, talking about them, it's so very, very important that, um, a 3-year-old can be 22 years of age now and have a really strong understanding of who his father was.
That's really awesome. As you were telling that story, so when my daughter, um, when she was about 2 years old, right? And we'd go shopping in the cart, and my dad would be like, "Well, Heather needs this." "Daddy, she doesn't need this. She's brand new. Does she have one?" No. "Then she needs it." And so that was how we would discern wants from needs. And so
Right.
so when my first grandson was, or when my I've only got one grandson, I've got one granddaughter. So when my grandson was
Oh,
born, and I'd be like, "Well, he's brand new. He needs everything." And Heather she would just laugh, and she would tell her husband, "Don't even try. This is my dad coming out in her." And now my granddaughter, because they've heard this all their 6 and 3 years of life, right? My granddaughter will be like, but we need it, Mom. We need it. And if you need it, well, then it must go in the cart. So,
Yes, yes, that's great. That's so great.
oh, that's fun. All right. So if someone was looking at having an end of life doula to help support them on this journey, how do they decide that's the right choice and when?
Well, I mean, I'd ultimately say look at your own support system first and foremost, right? Um, and I mean, if you feel like you can use some extra help um, in navigating end of life. Now, doulas can also just be there for planning purposes only. Someone doesn't need to be actually into life, like nearing death.
Mm.
A doula can help with planning, getting your end of life directives.
Mm.
It must be the end of the day. Directives put together. There's some medical directives you can have help with, just straight up planning for your funeral and things like that. Someone to help with all of that. You don't need to be ill or terminal or anything like that. So
Mm. That's a
just
great point. So all the end
straight
of
up,
life stuff, right?
right? Just straight up planning.
When we were looking at that stuff for Mom, so my sister was the medical power of attorney. And I said, "You- Mom did that for her own reasons." I said it was the best thing she ever did because I can do it, but I suck at paperwork. I hate paperwork. My sister is so great at navigating all that stuff. I don't know what I would have done if, because her son had a circumstance. She got really, really in tune with how the medical system works, how insurances work,
Uh-huh.
how life and all these different things, right? And she knew, so she knew the questions to ask of whom, and she knew how to connect the dots. It was fantastic. And I don't know what I would have done. She connected with the funeral home and did all the arrangements and all that stuff. And what I'm hearing you say is you can help people think of these things and help them understand which avenues to go down, and you are able to um, do those detailed components that it takes to be prepared before someone is actually needing those services.
Right, right. Have those conversations. Just have those conversations and think about it ahead of time. I actually have some journals that are very much about pre planning
Mm.
to walk people through. Um, some have some naughty words in them if you're prone to those kind of things. It's more
Love it.
fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, just some proactive thoughts on it. Here's, like for example, like coincidentally, 6 months before my husband was even diagnosed with lung cancer, I realized I had no idea where what any of our bills were, any of our
Mm.
passwords. I happened to just sit down and say, where is all our money going? Just coincidentally. So I actually have a planner that's got a section of, literally what are all your passwords? What are all your accounts? Let's just make sure everything is in order because bad things do happen and you can go away just out of nowhere and leave people unprepared. So
Mhm.
it's not the most enjoyable conversation to have, but it's a really good one to have. And you can tuck this journal away in a spot so that your loved ones can be prepared should something happen to you. So it's good information to kind of tuck away. But
I was just laughing because our family is so open about what we're thinking and all the things, right? And as we're going on this journey with my mom earlier in the year, I remembered taking, so it was my daughter, my son-in-law, the grands, my husband was there, and we're at dinner at some restaurant, and we're just having a grand old time. And all of a sudden, my daughter looks at me and says, "So, Mom, are you prepared so that everything we need to know when you die is taken care of?" Like, because she had had some people in her life whose parents had passed, and they were still a year or two later trying to sort things out. I mean, that happened to her
Exactly.
stepmom, where things were so in such disorder that, and I'm like, yep, lower drawer over here, they're safe. And then the attorney and the investor, these are the people you need to the investment
Yeah.
banker, that's who you need to talk to. They
Yep.
got everything. We've got it
I
all in
took
nice little.
I took my daughter on a impromptu trip a couple years back, and I said I said to her boyfriend, he was the only one left in town. He was watching the dogs, and I said, "Okay, if we die," and this is exactly what I said. "If we die, I'm leaving a post-it note on my laptop in the office, and it's got the password to the laptop, and then there's a file in there, and it's this, and then in that file, it's got all the passwords." And he's looking, and I go, "What?" He goes, "If you die." I said, "Well, you're the only left." So
Yeah.
it's like, it's your ghostwrite. And my daughter looks at him, he goes, "It's okay, but she's serious." And I'm like, "Yes, I am."
Well, and I love that because most people don't think of that. And crazy things happen every day, right?
Yep,
So,
exactly. Yeah. So he now knows what it's like for me to travel with my daughter, or you know what I mean? Like if we're all together and you're the only one left,
yeah.
it's here's all the things you need to know, dude. But it's true. You have to be prepared. And it's just that next level thinking that you don't want to leave this stuff to someone else, because it is a nightmare to go through. And unfortunately, there's some things that'll happen and the state will end up with your stuff. And I'm sure you don't want to do that to your family, or it's just that's not what you want for your things. So it's pretty
Exactly.
easy. It's pretty easy to be a little bit prepared. It really doesn't take that much time.
Mhm.
And you know, you know,
I just had a curious question pop in to my
yeah.
brain that so because my mom passed away, of course, I asked my husband, so when the day comes and your mom chooses to check out, you're her only son. She has siblings, and who's to say they'll still be around? I mean, right now, all the kids are still here, right? But every year goes around, everybody gets older. And so I asked him, I said, would you know like where all her accounts are, or all the things that need to be taken care of, or all the I'm just curious. And he's like, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
do you think you should? And he's like, I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah. Yep.
How do because I can only imagine him going to her and saying, so I just want to be prepared. How do you help someone broach that topic without setting someone up? I am not going anywhere. Right? I can just see it
Yeah.
happening. How do you go there?
Well, I mean, you can just ask, but if you think it's going to be a trigger, or something like that, monitor their mail
Mm,
and look for, account statements and things like that. Now, if they're tech savvy, which some of the older folks are these days, then you have to monitor like emails. So, I mean, it's kind of hard not to just straight up ask. you know but you have to understand their temperaments and things. Like, older folks are pretty sensitive to money conversations. There, it's a generational thing. I've learned.
mhm.
They get a little, well, why do you want to know about my money? It's none of your business kind of thing. But, um, you know, take a little steps, little baby steps in there, you know, that sort of thing. And hopefully that they can make some in ways in. Um,
Well, and I'm thinking that he could hire you for like an hour of consultation to help
yeah.
him set things up and
Yep.
kind of get a little coaching around how to touch on the topic, or come up with ways that would help him feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
I think that could be a really good, because you've got the tools.
Yeah. We can certainly do a little coaching session. Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Cool. And you need to connect with him because of where he works too.
There is that.
I love it. All right. So I want you to go. There's two things I want you to touch on as we wrap our conversation. The first one is, when you think about living into your best life and this pivot that you're making, what advice or words of wisdom would you give to your kids as they're starting their adult years and kind of going through life? What have you learned through this that you would impart that wisdom to them or to your yet to be born grandchildren?
Well, for me, I've already done a lot with my kids as far as listening and learning who you are
Mm,
and understanding how you see and perceive the world,
mhm,
and staying as true to that as you can.
mm,
So I knew personally, I knew from a very early age that I, my brain is different, that I'm wired a little differently. Um, Years and years and years later, finding out that means I have ADHD. But honoring that and understanding what that means is that there's certain ways that I have to be fulfilled in life. So this idea of adding value
mhm,
and being connected and having passion in whatever it is that I do, I have to have that. I have to be able to add value and be interested in and give back is so ingrained in who I am as a human being that without it, I'm not successful at anything that I try or do. And allowing my children to understand that about me allows them to understand that about themselves.
I like that.
So, not stifling any of that about yourself is so key. And
Mhm,
my children know that. So, they know that about themselves. They know that they don't fit into the mold of what society thinks that they should be. And as such, both of them have taken very different pathways in their lives.
mhm.
My daughter's never held a traditional 9 to 5 job, and she's been successful, taking a different path. My son, straight out of high school, didn't go the 4 year university route. He went a different path and went out of the country, went to a different country for school. So they're both recognizing that what everybody a normal quote unquote
Right.
traditional path for either one of them is not for them. So um and to that point, there will be no grandchildren from either one of them. So both of them have already recognized that children are not for them. So um
That's a
I
great
love that.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They've already established that they know for them that kids are not in the cards. So I will have a lot of fur grandbabies. They love
Nice.
the pets and whatnot. So, and that's what I would, that's what I would say to anybody. Quite honestly, is don't please try to succumb to the pressures that there are out there of fitting into a mold of what society thinks of as traditional, or as this is the way to do things, that, you go to school, you go to college, you find a XYZ kind of job, and that's the way to do things, because there are so many different ways and so many different paths and so many different journeys. And
Mhm.
even within the journeys, there's journeys within the journeys, and change is expected, and change is all part of it. And embrace it as much as you can.
Change is constant, right?
Yeah,
It's
it is.
so very cool. All right. And then how do people find you?
Well, it's pretty easy, actually. I do have a website. It's Coach Angie, and Angie is without an E, so it's ANGI .com. And it's kind of under construction, but that is how I can be found. And so just look me up under Coach Angie, Angie without an E .com.
And I'll put a link in the show notes so that people can go to your site and reach out to you. And I want to remind people, no, I'm going to have you, and let's see if you can read my mind. What would be the 3 nuggets of information that you've shared today, that if you could boil our conversation down to 3 really important key ideas, what would they be?
I knew you were going to make me do that. um, well, I would say don't don't, let's not start with a negative. Let's do
Mhm.
do uh do take the journey. um I don't know, follow your dreams. I don't like that one. Do take the journey. um be prepared. Take the time to be prepared for the end of life.
Yep.
And change is constant.
Change is constant.
Yeah.
And the nugget I want to add to that, and it's kind of a asterisk under number 2, is it's never too early to start planning for the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's good. That's good.
Very cool. Oh, Angie, thank you so much for being here with me and joining and having this conversation. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. Now that
Thank
we've
you.
connected, we will keep connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that.
So much,
Thank
Polly.
thank you. All right. So for the listeners, thank you for joining again today. And if you like what you've heard, please like us, share this conversation with anyone that you feel it might help. You might have someone in your life that's on a life trajectory, or you may just want to start preparing for yourself. So please share this podcast, and then also subscribe, because every week I bring different topics that help you live into your best life. So until next week, enjoy the journey.
Thank you for listening to Paulie Skaja, your show host for Live Into Your Best Life. Check out the show notes and visit her at paulieskaya.com to learn more and continue your journey. Until next week, enjoy the adventure.